Begin Self-Publishing, Episode 14. Crowdfunding with Ryan Hanley.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
This week's show is an interview with marketing author Ryan Hanley. He is self-published using a crowdfunding service to finance his self-publishing journey, a book called Content Warfare. I talked to him about how he crowdfunded his book and whether he'd do it again, and any of the drawbacks and advantages to crowdfunding. I did realise after doing the interview that I didn't explain briefly what crowdfunding was, so I'll do that now. You may be familiar with online services such as Kickstarter. What happens here is that somebody wants to fund a project and they set a goal, so they say $10,000 or $100,000, depending on what the project is. And then those people who contribute money at certain levels will get certain rewards based on that. For a book, this is usually a hardcover of the book or the audio book, and you can get your name in the book for higher levels. In Ryan's case, his highest level was actually given a keynote speech at a presentation for the people who put in $1,500. We talk about this and other things in the interview. And now over to the interview. I've been listening to your Content Warfare podcast for a few months now. Then I went back and actually looked up about the fact that you'd self-published a book, which is good, and also that you actually use crowdfunding to self-publish a book. You used a platform called Publishizer, which, to be honest, I've never heard of.
Yep.
Why did you pick that platform and not something like Kickstarter or one of the major crowdfunding platforms?
So I looked at those, but I'll tell you, it really came down to a phone call I had with a guy by the name of Guy Vincent.
Yeah.
Guy is the founder of the PublishIser platform and a friend of a good friend of mine, Tom Morkis, who really was the catalyst to taking my book from really concept to idea. And even though Tom didn't actually do any work for me, he counseled me and made some connections that really helped make the book come alive. So he's the one that introduced me to Guy. I spent about an hour and a half on the phone with Guy talking about his platform and crowdfunding and self-publishing and just, what it would take to get this book from, a bunch of ideas and some articles that I had tested on the site and some stuff I had written outside of the site. And it was really a mishmash of different things. And he's the one that kind of helped me pull it all together. And the Publishizer seemed like as good a platform as any other. I'm sure that I could have been successful on Kickstarter or maybe even more successful. I mean, I'm sure that's possible because of some of the viral nature of it. Certainly the way that it worked out and now understanding a little bit more about how Kickstarter's platform works. The success I had on day one, I may have done even better.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I felt very comfortable with the platform and, that part of the process wasn't necessarily about selling the max number of books. It was about activating my core audience and validating the idea for the book, both of which happened. So,
yeah. So, when did you first have the idea that you wanted to write a book about? I mean, how long have you been doing like content marketing and building this audience up before you sort of decided to start to write a book?
It's probably been. So I've been doing content marketing for 6 years.
Yeah.
I've probably been helping people and writing about it and kind of this more kind of speaker, author, consultant role, I guess, that so many people have. I've probably been doing that for about 4. So short backstory is, I went to work for my father-in-law at his independent insurance agency. So, in upstate New York, which is a relatively small town, about 2.5 hours north of New York City. And I was really terrible at it. I hated cold calling.
Yeah.
I felt like I was constantly harassing and interrupting people and it was really not fun. And I was struggling pretty bad. I just was very unhappy. And I went to a networking event at a local chamber of commerce, just like a business group thing. And, those like 8th grade dance circles form, even as adults, we all just get into circles with our friends.
These little cliques form, don't
right,
they?
Right.
Yeah.
But so there was a real estate agent and a mortgage broker who were talking to each other, and actually kind of the list of people that I wanted to meet at that event, those were two of the people, because they would be good centers of influence for me if I could make a connection with them. So I elbowed my way into the circle, and I wasn't next to them, but I could hear them. And they were just finishing up their conversation, and one of them said to the other, today I can't really remember which one, but one of them said to the other, we'll just connect on LinkedIn. And then they separated. Then they kind of left the circle and went about the rest of their day. And it just like my mind was blown. I had never been on LinkedIn. Like I didn't have a propensity for social media. I actually didn't have a Facebook account at that time. I knew of the things, but I didn't have them. This is like 2009, 2008, 2009. And I wasn't on these platforms, and this light bulb went off over my head. Like this is the moment that kind of put me on a different path. And it was like, there are conversations happening in a place that I'm actually not part of. So, kind of speed up the story. I went home, I started learning on LinkedIn. I started kind of learning what LinkedIn was. And that was where I got my first start on the digital world. And I figured out the one lesson that kind of is the crux of the book and of all the things that I teach today. And it's the creators that win. It's the people who create the content that win the attention of potential new clients, new relationships, new friends, new audience members, whatever it is that you're searching for. If you're not creating something, they have no way to find you. And that sole concept is at the heart of everything that I do, is how do we create the content that attracts the people that we ultimately want to have in our lives in whatever capacity that is. If we're just blogging for fun, maybe it's friends and like interests. If it's for business, then it's new clients and new relationships. And it just has been a natural progression from there, and to the point where I thought I needed to take all these ideas and condense them into one work, so that if someone said, how do I, kind of duplicate what you're doing, or how do I take the lessons that you're teaching and put them into my own business, I can hand them that piece of work and say, if you digest this, you'll know everything that I know, and you'll be able to create your own success online.
So it's kind of like your blueprint for success in terms of what you've learned then, really, is what the Content Warfare book's about.
And one of the differences I would say, and this is maybe to the ultimate detriment of book sales, and I'm not unhappy. The book has done very well, and I'm very happy with its, what it's been. And so this isn't, I don't mean that like detriment in the sense of it's not an international New York Times bestseller, right? So it's not that.
There are very few of them, really, in reality.
Yeah. So it's not a highly tactical book.
Yeah.
I didn't do a lot of like 7 steps to this, 8 steps to that kind of thing. If you post on Facebook 3 times a day at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. and 3 in the afternoon, you'll be infinitely successful. So it's not a lot of that kind of garbage. It's more of messaging, understanding your business, understanding the type of client that you want, and then how do you create the set of words in a certain order that when put out into any of these spaces, speaking a live presentation, writing an email, doing a postcard, tweeting, Facebook, whatever the tactic is, doesn't matter if you're completely dialed into the audience and the message. And that's really what the book is about.
Yeah, I mean, what I find interesting about you, and one of the reasons why I was quite keen to have you on my show, is that I'm always kind of talking about the fact that self-publishing as an activity isn't the marketing of the book, and it's not the writing of the book. And one of the reasons why I say that is that there are people like you who know the marketing side of it, but you don't know the writing side. And there's a lot of other people, an awful lot of authors and other shows where they go on about the marketing side of it and not the writing side of it. And it's interesting how self-publishing can become from all sorts of angles. Like some people use their book as a marketing tool and as an authority tool. It sounds like your biggest problem was actually the writing part of the book. It's getting your thoughts together and getting everything. And I think crowdfunding is a good way of an author who is good at marketing actually getting a book done relatively risk-free, so to speak.
So so let me drive back on the crowdfunding. The thing I like about crowdfunding is that it's the two things that I said before. It allows you to activate your audience and validate the idea.
Yeah.
So before you put it out into the world, you can say, will you pay for the thing, right? So activating the audience. Will you pay for the thing? And is the audience valid, right?
Yeah.
Or is the idea valid? Do they believe in the concept enough that they're willing to pay for something that doesn't yet exist? That's the power of crowdfunding, activating your audience and validating the idea. Here's the negative side of crowdfunding that a lot of people do not talk about. And this is more specifically to the publishing world, where momentum is such a key to selling and distribution. And that's, and this isn't a negative in that it's not something that can't be overcome, but it's something that isn't often talked about in the self-publishing world that I think, I've tried to champion just because I want people to not make some of the same mistakes that I did. So when you crowdfund, you are gobbling up your core audience, right? When you crowdfund, your core audience, the people who really believe, the people who you could put any price tag on the thing, and day one at 8:01 when the thing goes live, they're purchasing it, right?
Yeah.
So that audience gets gobbled up in the crowdfunding. So in the self-publishing world, a huge part of your distribution success early on is the momentum that you get from that initial push on sites like Amazon or wherever else you've decided to put your book.
Yeah.
So the initial push throws you up the list. That gets you exposure to people who don't know who you are. They purchase the book, and then, hopefully if it's a good work and they share it, then it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's kind of the goal. What crowdfunding does is that initial push, you're taking a huge cut of those people and taking them out of the market, because they're not going to come back and buy the book again when you launch it on Amazon. They may come back and leave you a review, but they're not going to purchase it again. They've already purchased it. So it's not something that can't be overcome, but it's something that needs to be tactically understood.
Yeah.
And maybe you set your crowdfunding goal to a certain point where once you've gotten close, you cut off all your marketing so that you just barely hit your goal, and you've left a certain segment of your audience that's still kind of thirsty for it, and you have to have other methods. And we could talk about the whole kind of launch and marketing side of crowdfunding, and you can obviously, if you want, we can talk about that. But that's a little piece that I don't hear a lot of crowdfunding authors talk about, and it's just it can bite you. It can bite you and come back to bite you if you don't plan for it.
Yeah, well, unless it's not always the case that you need to get huge sales straight away, but usually that is the way that people get into like Amazon charts, and then you get sales off that. So how many books did you actually give away as part of, you raised like $11,000, didn't you? Yeah,
so we raised $11,000 in 21 days, which is actually, which at the time,
amazing,
not sure anymore, it was the record for that platform. No one had ever raised, had never hit a $10,000 goal. So, Publishizer is just like any other crowdfunding platform. You set a goal. If you don't hit it, then no one gets charged and you don't get any money. But if you hit it, then, you go over. So there's kind of that to get you over the thing. No one had ever hit the $10,000 mark that quickly. So it was, obviously, I knew there was an audience for the book, and I knew they would pay for it. So I was very happy and excited. What was your question again? I went off.
Oh, don't worry about it. No, I was just asking. You may not even know off the top of your head, but approximately how many books did you give away?
That was a very simple question that I went way off tangent.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So we sold about, let's see, it was 257 books, hardcover books were purchased. There were more ebooks, and that was, I think, and that was 160 people, 160 people. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but that's about where it was. About 260 books, 150 to 160 people in that crowdfunding campaign.
I see that you sold some of your, I think it was a Keynote package where you were actually giving like a keynote as well as the book.
That was a very big part of the success of the campaign, because that was a $1,500 package. Yeah. So you got 25 books, and as long, if you paid for travel, I'd come down and speak for up to 3 hours. So that's, way under what my market rate is. I wanted to give people who were willing to come and support the book a deep discount on the speaking, and obviously it got me an opportunity to speak in front of their audience and everything. So it was kind of a win-win, but that was a huge part. I got 3 organizations who, in all openness, I had been talking to all three groups prior to the event, but it got all three groups to commit and have me come in and support the thing. So I think it was a very good, it's not like by putting that package out there, people are just going to spend $1,500 on you, right? Because I had one author like, oh, I want to do that. And I was like, well, do you have engagements in your pipeline that you're speaking with event coordinators about possibly coming in? They're like, no. And I said, well, you can put it in there, but I wouldn't hold your breath that someone's just going to come and drop $1,500 without talking to you first. Like, that's not going to happen. So they were in my pipeline, but it did get them out and get them to commit. And that's $4,500. So that's almost halfway, just from those three.
Well, you could argue that maybe that's part of your solution to the problem of getting that surge of sales if you just sell very, very big packages to pay for your book.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think that's a really valid strategy. I think that by doing that, so here's one of the, if we're getting into the nuts and bolts of it, there's a lot of decisions that you have to make when you decide to crowdfund your book. First is, are you going to offer the ebook? So I struggle with this because I thought to myself, you can't charge more than $10 for an ebook because you're giving them a virtual copy and I don't know, you're going to charge $25.
It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right? And you're never going to, you look at the way Kindle, even the international bestsellers that we were talking about, their ebooks are only going for $9.99. So they're only at 10, right? Most authors who publish today, their ebooks are somewhere between $3.99 and $7.99. Yeah. So you just can't offer more than that. So I struggled with, in order to hit my goal, I have to sell a lot of $10 books to get there. Do I want to do that? Do I even want to offer a single hard copy at $25? Right? Which, and here's another lesson. International shipping sucks. Whether you're coming from outside the U.S. inside or inside the U.S. outside, it's a hassle. It's expensive. And I'll tell you, I've actually sent a couple books to people throughout the world, non-U.S. residents that haven't actually got there. And it's been months, at like $40 to ship a book. I'm actually net losing for doing that. So you have to be really careful with who contributes, how they contribute, what your price point's in. You have to take into account shipping if you're going to allow international. So if you're in the U.S., do you want to even allow international purchases? Because fulfillment is extremely tough. If you do, how much extra do you pay? If you're anywhere out, inside your region, it doesn't matter if you're just in the U.S. That's where I live. So that's what I experienced. So these are all things that you have to consider. Do you want to look at just larger packages where 7 purchases gets you over the hump? Maybe you have to work a little harder to get those 7, but maybe it's what you really want. You want an hour-long webinar with an audience, and you'll give them 20 books, and that's worth it to you for whatever, you have to do the math. But that might be a better way of not depleting your core audience, hitting your mark that you need, and being able to do, I find that when I speak to a group, I can literally see the spikes. Like if I look at my chart, at my Amazon chart, every time I have a speaking engagement, there's a spike. Every time I do a podcast like this or a webinar, there's a spike. So there is a direct relationship between you, being able to give your message, your energy, whatever it is that makes, you special or makes that connection with an audience. That's really powerful to authors. If you think you're just going to write it and put it out there and send some emails and be done, unless you have a mega list or some friends that have mega email lists that just law of numbers, you're going to sell books, you're going to struggle. It really is as much getting out there into the world and letting people start to see who you are. And people buy the book as much because they like you as much as they want the material. So,
yeah, well, I've noticed every time I've been to a conference or something else, like podcast listens go up. Even my fiction book sales go up. Yep. Not many people buy my fiction books. I mean, it's so remarkable. Just like that in-person contact just makes a big difference.
It really does. I mean, I've bought in books. I've bought in books that I will never read, but I bought them because I liked the person. Yeah. Right? I'm not even necessarily interested in the topic. I just like the person and I want to support them. and I have no interest in reading their book. And it's not even that their book isn't bad. It's just, it's not of interest to me. I have other things I'd rather read, but I want to support that person and what they're doing because I know they're working hard and helping an audience. And in that way, I would like to support them. And I think there's a lot of people who do that, and that's okay, right? I obviously you want people to read and your book and maybe take something away. I mean, if one person takes one thing away, or if every reader takes one thing out of your work, then, or experiences one emotion that gets them coming back, right, with your fiction books, then it's worthwhile to do the work. But it's just interesting the way these things work. It is in no way a linear path.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to get people to buy your book and get the thing moving. But it all comes down to building that relationship with people almost one at a time.
Yeah. Have you got any plans in the future to write any more books? Is there like a content jihad or something on the way?
Yeah. Oh, geez. Wow.
And would you crowdfund them?
Sort of, I'd get on some sort of NSA list if I use the word jihad in my books in the United States. But I think I have other topics that I want to talk about. I think my wife would divorce me if I decided to write another book right now. We have a soon-to-be 2-year-old and another one on the way in January. So I'm going to get through I'm going to wait a couple of years, get through the early stages of my two sons' life, and hopefully get back to it. It took a lot of energy, especially because I have a full-time job. You know, I'm the head of marketing for a national lead generation platform. So, you know, we have 27,000 clients. It's pretty hectic work, great work, but hectic. And my writing the book was completely done on the side, right? I would get up at 4 a.m. every day. I would write from 4 to 6. At 6, my kid got up. I would do the kid until it was time to go to work, get home from work, do family after work. As soon as the kid would go to bed, I'd be back in front of the computer and try to write from about 8:30 to midnight. So I was getting, for almost 4 months, 4 or 5 times a week, about 3 hours worth of sleep. Yeah. And that's the only way that I pulled the whole thing together. I wanted it to get done. I had this responsibility to these people who had paid for the crowdfunding campaign, so I couldn't just not make good on that. But it was a lot of work. And I think that I'm going to wait. I would like to go traditional if I were to do it again. Nothing against self-publishing. I think self-publishing is great, and I wouldn't not consider it, but I would like to experience that realm. I purposefully self-published the first time because I wanted to own intellectually every part of the process, right? I wanted to know this is what it takes to put a cover together, and this is what it takes to do story editing and copy editing and, you know, all the pieces, so that when I did go traditional, I wouldn't be smacked in the face with anything. I would know how it worked, and, or at least, you know, from a very tactical standpoint. And then I just want to find the right partner. And I have some ideas. I'm starting to make some contacts, but I'm probably a year or two out before I start working on another book.
For me, crowdfunding kind of appears to be in the middle between like what you call pure self-publishing, where you're taking all the risk yourself, so you're covering all the costs. Then you've got crowdfunding, where you're kind of getting other people to do it up front, but you do lose things because, well, like in your case, you were giving away free speaking to pay for your book, but you had less risk. And then publishing is the pure risk-free option in a way, but you're getting less revenue because the publishers, in effect, are taking the risk on. So that's the way I kind of think of those. So that's why I'm quite interested in crowdfunding, really. On
the revenue side, this is what I would say to people from a non-fiction standpoint. So I haven't obviously not written a fiction book, so I have no experience. From a non-fiction standpoint, I would say that the difference in revenue between self-publishing and traditional publishing is negligible, unless you're selling hundreds of thousands or millions of copies, which I wouldn't
put that true. I would I think you're right in terms of print books. In terms of ebooks, there is a big difference. But then again, you do need that early kind of lead volume to get high enough into the sort of Amazon charts, so it makes a difference.
It also depends on what your goal is for the book, right?
Oh, so
your goal is clients and speaking engagements and authority. There is something to having that imprint on the book. Maybe that will change between now and when I start to write a book again, but there is very much in that world of people who are booking speakers for money to very serious, very legitimate events. that imprint means something to them. It still does today. That is a reality that I firmly believe. It's not everything. There are self-publishing authors who can break through that. But if you're using that book as a tool to get in front of event coordinators who could possibly book you as a speaker or clients, that imprint still does mean something today. And I think that that's the trade-off in revenue that you're making, is you're saying, I am going this route for the authority that comes with having that imprint. Now, the imprint doesn't mean everything, but it is part of a piece that gets your foot in the door. It's like a social validation thing, right? Having reviews on Google for your small business isn't necessarily going to get them to press the buy button, but it certainly helps lubricate that transaction.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there is, and I think it's more so if you were in one of these sort of heavily branded, like the Dummies books or something like that. If you went with if you just get your book published by a small press, then I'm not sure there's much more authority advantage than self-publishing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's definitely, it's the bigger houses, right? So like if you get a Penguin or something to put their imprint on your book, that has weight today. That still has a lot of weight today, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm sure if you did insurance content marketing for dummies or something, then that would really push up your standing. But anyway, I wrote down a number of questions which I've totally ignored, so I'll try and find one that.
You can just rapid fire them at me, and I'll do my best.
Well, I've kind of asked most of them, but I'll read them off anyway. Why did you decide to crowdfund content warfare as opposed to self-publishing or pitching a publisher? You kind of answered that already, really.
Yeah, I needed some revenue I wanted to make, so the one piece to the crowdfunding, the real genesis of it was I wanted to make this book be as close a physical product in terms of its professionalism and its quality to what you would get from a traditional publisher. So I did not hesitate to spend money on cover design, copy editing, story editing, interior design, the quality of the hardcover, all of that was taken into account, and I spent every single dollar of that $11K back into the book. So none of that went to anything other than maybe I bought my wife dinner for my wife. You know what I mean? It all went back into the book. None of it was just pocketed and spent. Okay.
What would you do differently if you could do it again?
I would probably not crowdfund.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think that if I had just, say saved up a couple months, save that money that I needed to do everything I wanted to do and the quality of the book, I probably would not have put a hardcover out, because that was really the money suck, was the hardcover. I probably would have only needed about somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 to do everything else, kind of at the quality that I wanted it done, without the hardcover. All the rest of the expense went to the hardcover. So I would have gone CreateSpace and Kindle version, and I would have just launched out onto Amazon from there, pushed all that early audience through, leveraged a lot more contacts that I kind of leveraged in the crowdfunding time. And I think that, I may have been happier with the early results. Now, I've just had to work. I've still kind of gotten to where I wanted to be. It just took a lot of work after the launch, right? The launch was not as big as I would have initially wanted.
No, because you used it all up in your crowdfunding
Because I used it all up. Yeah. So yeah, I probably wouldn't have crowdfunded, and I wouldn't have done the hardcover. I would have waited for there to be a certain level of success, and then if there was an outcrying for the hardcover, then I would have created it. But I don't think there's such a small number of people today, I think, that delineate between the hardcover and the softcover. I think a lot of people, the softcover is actually easier to read, I think. And CreateSpace for, they do a good job. They do a good job with their books. I was very happy with the soft covers. So I probably wouldn't have done a hardcover, and I wouldn't have crowdfunded if I had to do it again.
Did you do a print run of your hardcover books, or did you go to Ingram Spark or one of these sort of hardcover print on demand providers?
I used BookBaby.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I used BookBaby.
I think they're similar to Ingram Spark.
Yep, very similar. I found the tool much easier to use.
Yeah.
I liked the print on demand feature inside of Amazon, so you can buy the hardcover on Amazon. There's some hiccups with it because BookBaby is the publisher on the hardcover, and I'm the publisher on the
Kindle
paperback
version,
and Kindle. The counts don't link up. There's like at a certain point I just kind of gave up on it because I tell everybody not to buy the hardcover anyways. I just tell them buy the paperback. You're just going to save yourself, $12 and you're going to get the same thing and it's easier to read. And like I said, I'm not in it for the money. So I don't necessarily care. I buy the Kindle version for $3.99. I mean, I purposefully made the Kindle version very inexpensive for the purpose of I just want people to read it. I'm not trying to make money off the book. It's about getting this message out because I think when people read it, just from the feedback I've gotten and the reviews and, I think it really does move the needle for people. So it's more about people reading it than making money. So I never send people to the hardcover.
I notice you're in the KDP Select, like the exclusive scheme to Amazon for the ebooks. Are you just, because they give you these 2 price promotion options every 3 months. Are you using them every 3 months to sort of make your book free or
I don't use them every 3 months, but I've used them twice. Yeah. I've used, I ran a free promotion, which 750 people downloaded the book for. And then I used a 99-cent promotion on, what was going on that day? There was something going on. And I was like, I'm just going to make it 99 cents today. It was just like completely random. And I dropped it down to 99 cents and I emailed and sent it out. And about 150 people bought the book that day. So dropping the price definitely gets people to read it. I think that you have to use it tactically.
Yeah.
I didn't want to make it like this big to do. I wanted to kind of make it a surprise and see what would happen. And 150 people buying it, day of was very exciting. So I think they definitely work. I just stuck with Amazon. I know it's not on iBooks. It's not on, the ebook isn't on,
Kobo and all the various other.
Barnes & Noble or any of those other things. And the truth is, people aren't emailing me like, I want to read your book, and it's not on. I probably had one person say Google Play, but Google Play isn't accepting books right now. And I had one person say iBooks. And the amount of effort and stress and coordination that goes into getting these things up on these platforms, because they all use different features, and it's just, it's such a headache. I know there are a couple tools that kind of manage that, but even then, it's like a whole nother platform you have to go in. And I just said, if I'm serving a very large portion of the audience with Kindle and with paperback, and, the truth is, and your audience can take advantage of this if they want. If you don't use Kindle and you don't use, and you're not willing to buy the paperback and you still want the PDF, if you email me at ryan@ryanhanley.com, I'll send you the PDF version for free. I don't care.
Okay. Well, I've actually published on most of the other ones, and there are ways of doing it, but I think actually it's more applicable if you're trying to sell sort of internationally, because Amazon are the biggest in the US and the UK and Germany as well. If you want to go to sell in the Far East, but I'm not sure how many listeners, because it's like with this podcast, most of the listeners are in the US. So
yeah.
If you were looking to sort of sell it internationally, you might want to look at the other platforms. But I think because you were more focused on the actual paper side anyway to begin with. So
yeah, and the other thing too is Amazon. One of the countries that I sell outside the U.S. and the U.K., the third region that I get book sales from is India.
Oh, really?
So I know in India, something's going on. Amazon works somehow there because I see where there's like all the different regions. It's like Amazon.uk, Amazon.in, Amazon. Whatever.
Yeah. And
it's US, UK, and then very closely behind the UK even is India. Well, in terms of their sales are.
Well, for then it makes perfect sense for you to stay in KDP Select because you actually get higher royalties in India. And India is really, they used to be Flipkart, but I think they've died a death now. So I think Amazon are the only ebook retailer in India. So for your purposes, definitely stay in KDP Select. Maybe do a promotion there or something. I don't think you can actually. I think you can only do them. Okay, of my other questions, how did you find an editor for your book? Do you think you got good value for money there?
I did, I got incredible value. I worked with a guy by the name of Tom Owens. He and his wife do book editing, and she is, I think she's a fiction author as well. He just does editing, and she does the story side and he does the copy side. And I got incredible value from them. They really were kind of dialed into my voice and what I was trying to do. And I have a conversational tone, but I knew that wouldn't work as well in a book format. So I wanted to stay close to the kind of, if you read my blog, the very conversational tone that I have there, but be more consistent and congruent throughout. And, without it losing, I think, what people ultimately read me. I'm not Shakespeare or, I'm not even, Seth Godin or someone who's very, who has a very distinct style and can take liberties. I needed to walk that fine line of the voice, but still consistent and congruent, and they dialed into that. So, and they were actually referred to me by Tom Morkis. So.
Oh, okay. So it was a referral then. That's how you found them.
Yes. Yep. That's how I found them. I was referred to them, and again, spent an hour on the phone and talked through. And I actually, part of my crowdfunding campaign, one of the very tactical things that I'll share with your audience about success is I built for the 60 days before I launched, I actually built an email list of people who, in exchange for a chapter of the book, were willing to let me market to them day of. So basically I said, here's an email list. It's a notification list for when the book goes live on the crowdfunding campaign. If you allow me to do that, I will give you a chapter of the book. So I wrote a chapter of the book. It was kind of in the beginning. The book's broken out into 4 sections. It's like end of the first section. So it's not the first chapter, but so I had him edit the whole thing and do all the story editing and line it all out. And it wasn't exactly the way it came out because he didn't, he couldn't put it in context of the overall book. But I said, if you like this, you'll like the book. Yeah. And I had about 350 people sign up for that email list, and probably, this is an estimate, I would say over 200 either contributed to the crowdfunding campaign or bought the book. So that was a very successful tactical thing that I did, was giving away that free chapter in exchange for letting me market to them.
Okay. And my final question of my list that I printed out, would you do any non-book related crowdfunding campaigns in future? Maybe the Ryan Hanley action figure or something like those though.
If I thought an action figure would sell, yes. So I actually love crowdfunding. I love the whole concept of crowdfunding. So I hope that whoever's listening doesn't take away from this that I'm anti-crowdfunding because I wouldn't do it again. I did it. I'm happy that I did it. I feel it was an incredible experience. I learned a lot. I think for other things, like, you see things like drones and stuff. I'm into drones. So I see a lot of like drones are new technology drones are there. For that kind of thing, you don't need to like be bumped up an Amazon list to get in some list that people look at every day, right? Like the key with with Amazon, and the reason that I focus on that is because, that initial push if that can get you up into, say, the top 10 of marketing, and every day people are going to the top 10 of marketing to see what's the hottest book in marketing today, and they see that your book's that book, there's a decent chance they're going to buy it. Yeah. So that's important to your book sales. If you're selling a product or a technology or some sort of mission or whatever, people crowdfund all kinds of things, a movie, then that's not as necessarily as important, and crowdfunding becomes an incredible platform for you to use and finance, do early financing on your project. So I would absolutely, I just don't have anything today that I would do that for, but yes, I would use it.
Okay. I think we're not quite running out of time, but I'll wrap it up before we do run out of time. Where can people find out about you? Obviously ryanhanley.com, but is there anywhere you particularly want to send people or get people to do if they decide they like you after hearing you on this?
Yeah, so a great place to connect with me is on Twitter. I'm RyanHanley_com. I have a podcast as well, the Content Warfare Podcast. You can find that at ryanhanley.com. And I also have started using blab.im, the live video I don't want to say conferencing, but basically if people aren't familiar with Blab, it's maybe you've heard of Periscope. It's live video. You can bring on up to 3 guests, so you can have 4 people on at once. I've been doing a lot of my interviews there, and that's a really fun platform. So yeah, I mean, if you go to ryanhanley.com. You'll find everything there is about me and the work that I do.
Okay. And if there's one sentence that you want people to take away from your views about self-publishing, what would that be?
I'm going to quote Richard Branson, and it is my favorite quote of all time. Screw it, let's do it.
Thanks a lot for your time, Ryan. It's very nice talking to you.
It has been my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.